Welcome to Earthology, a place where we slow down, where the world softens at the edges and every question becomes a doorway into wonder. If you're here, perhaps it's late. Perhaps the noise of the day has faded into a softer hum. You might be lying down, listening in the dim glow of a screen, or letting your mind drift as you close your eyes. Wherever you are, take a breath. Feel the air move through you, invisible, weightless, and yet it is everything. If you like this kind of videos, please subscribe to this channel. Above you, there is the sky. Vast, familiar, the one constant that has always been there. The same sky your ancestors looked upon. The same one that greeted the first dawns of this planet. And yet, for all its familiarity, the sky is not what it seems. We say it is blue. We draw it that way. We teach it to children, paint it in stories, and live our days beneath it as if its color were a simple truth. But what if I told you the sky is not blue, not truly, not in the way you think? Its color, that endless delicate hue stretching from horizon to horizon, is an illusion, a trick of light and air, a story whispered between the sun and your eyes. Tonight, we'll wander into that illusion. We'll drift into the light that fills our days, break it apart into the colors it hides, and follow those pieces into the quiet mystery of what we see and why. This isn't just a lesson in physics or perception. It's a meditation on how reality speaks to us and how our minds, in turn, interpret the world into something beautiful. Because the sky, like life itself, is more than what it appears to be. It is a mirror, a reflection of our own capacity to wonder. So let's begin, not with facts or diagrams, but with the simple act of looking up. Imagine it now, the endless vault of air above you, the light of the sun, unseen yet everywhere. And between the two, 1,000 invisible interactions giving birth to color. The sky begins with sunlight, a beam of white light, traveling across the vacuum of space for more than 8 minutes. In that journey, it crosses 93 million miles of emptiness, untouched, unscattered, pure. When it reaches Earth, that light meets something it hasn't encountered for all that distance, an atmosphere. Our atmosphere is thin, almost fragile. If the planet were the size of a globe, the air surrounding it would be no thicker than the varnish on its surface. And yet, within that thin shell of gases, something extraordinary happens. Light enters and begins to scatter. Sunlight, though it looks white to our eyes, is made of many colors. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. A spectrum of wavelengths, each moving through the air in slightly different ways. The shorter wavelengths, those of blue and violet, are more easily jostled, more easily thrown off their path. As light passes through the molecules of air, mostly nitrogen and oxygen, those shorter waves bounce, scatter, and diffuse in every direction. The longer wavelengths, red and yellow, travel more directly, less disturbed. And so, the sky fills with scattered blue light. Everywhere you look, that light comes to you, not from the sun itself, but from the air around you, glowing softly with borrowed radiance. It's called Rayleigh scattering, named after the British scientist John William Strutt, Lord Rayleigh, who first described it in the 19th century. He found that the intensity of scattered light varies inversely with the fourth power of its wavelength, meaning that shorter wavelengths scatter much more strongly than longer ones. Blue light, with its short waves, fills the sky with its presence, while red light, with its long waves, passes mostly straight through. But even that is not the whole truth, because violet light is even shorter in wavelength than blue. It scatters even more. If scattering alone decided color, the sky should appear violet. Yet it doesn't. Why? Because our eyes are tuned differently. The human retina has 3 kinds of cone cells, each sensitive to a range of wavelengths corresponding roughly to red, green, and blue. But the blue sensitive cones are fewer in number, and our eyes are less responsive to violet. Moreover, much of the violet light from the sun is absorbed by the upper atmosphere, filtered away by ozone. So, our brains interpret the mixture of scattered light not as violet, but as blue. What we see then is not the true color of the sky, for the sky has no color at all. It is the perception of scattered sunlight, translated by our biology into the illusion of blue. Pause for a moment and consider that. Every day, you look upon something that isn't there. The blue dome above you, the thing we call sky, is a construction of your senses. A painting drawn not on any canvas, but within the architecture of your mind. This is what makes the world so mysterious. It's not that it hides itself, it's that it reveals itself through us. Color is not in the light, nor in the air, nor in the sky. It is in the seeing. You might remember, as a child, lying in the grass on a warm afternoon, staring up until the edges of your vision began to shimmer. The longer you looked, the more the blue seemed to deepen, as if it were alive, a living thing stretching into infinity. But that depth was never distance. It was only light, scattered through a few dozen miles of air. Beyond that, there is only blackness, the same emptiness through which the sunlight traveled. The universe, from space, is dark. It is only from within the thin shell of Earth, as atmosphere, that we see this illusion of blue. And yet, isn't that beautiful? That something so vast and eternal looking could be so fragile, so dependent on the delicate dance of light and molecules and human sight. That something as profound as the color of the sky is really just a coincidence of physics and perception. It humbles the mind. It reminds us that beauty doesn't need to be permanent to be real. It can exist in the fleeting, in the subjective, in the brief moment between sunlight and the eye. The ancient peoples of Earth didn't know about Rayleigh scattering. They looked at the same blue sky and saw something divine. The Egyptians believed the sky was a vast ocean of water, held up by the goddess Nut, whose body arched above the earth. The Greeks imagined it as the realm of the gods, the shining dome of the heavens. The Hindus spoke of it as the cloak of Vishnu, infinite, eternal, serene. And for millennia, humans told stories to explain why the sky looked the way it did. Not because they were foolish, but because they were human, trying to find meaning in the beautiful. It's easy, now, to look back and smile at those myths, to think we have outgrown them. But in a way, we haven't. Science explains the mechanism. But the feeling, the quiet awe of looking up, remains untouched. It's the same wonder that drew ancient eyes toward the heavens, the same impulse that built temples and telescopes alike, the same desire to understand what we see and why we see it at all. Sometimes I think of how the color blue itself is a relatively recent invention in human history. In ancient languages, there was often no word for it. The Greeks described the sea as wine dark. The sky they called bronze or iron. The earliest texts, from the Vedas to Homer, barely mention blue at all. It seems that early humans did not see blue as we do, or perhaps did not name it. It was not until societies learned to create blue pigments, from lapis lazuli, indigo, azurite, that the idea of blue became real to language and art. Color, after all, is not only a biological perception, it is a cultural one. When you name something, you begin to see it differently. And when you see differently, the world changes with you. So the sky, this illusion of blue, has shaped not only our science, but our culture, our art, our emotions, our sense of the infinite. We associate blue with calmness, serenity, melancholy. We speak of blue moods and blue skies, using color to describe the weather within and without. And yet, this entire emotional palette arises from an optical illusion. Perhaps that's the most poetic thing of all, that an illusion, something that isn't truly there, can move us so deeply, can shape civilizations, can define what we call beautiful. It makes you wonder, How much of what we love in this world is like that? How much of what feels true is, in the end, a story we tell ourselves, a scattering of meaning through the atmosphere of perception? If the sky is not blue, then what is it? It is air, invisible gases illuminated by sunlight. It is atmosphere, molecules and dust and water vapor. It is physics, wavelengths, refraction, and scattering. It is biology, the cones of the eye, the wiring of the brain. And it is mind, interpretation, language, emotion. The sky, then, is all of these things together, a collaboration between nature and consciousness. You could say the sky is the largest shared illusion in the world. Every person who has ever lived has looked upon it and believed it was blue. Yet no two people have seen exactly the same sky, because no two eyes, no two minds are identical. And still, we agree. We point upward and say, "Look, the sky is blue." And in that agreement, something human happens. We build connection out of illusion. We find truth in the shared act of seeing. Perhaps that's what beauty really is. Not a quality of the world itself, but the resonance between the world and the mind that beholds it. When you look up tomorrow, in the calm light of day, remember this. You are not seeing the sky as it is. You are seeing sunlight scattered and transformed, light that has traveled millions of miles, only to be turned into color by the thin veil of air above you. You are seeing the breath of the planet made visible, and though the sky is not blue, it is still real. Real in the way that music is real, vibrations of air that become emotion through your perception. Real in the way that love is real, invisible, subjective, and yet utterly undeniable. Because sometimes the most real things are not the ones that can be measured, but the ones that can be felt. So let the illusion be. Let it stay blue. Let it remind you that truth and beauty need not always align, that sometimes the most profound truths are the ones that remind us how much we don't yet understand. Take another breath. The air you draw in is the same air that scatters the sunlight above you, the same air that carries the light of day and the sound of your own heartbeat. Invisible yet luminous. This is the beginning of the story of the sky that is not blue, and of the light that teaches us to see. But the sky's story does not end in daylight. It continues in motion, a slow breathing between day and night. Every morning and evening, the illusion changes its costume, painting itself in colors that seem to come from the heart rather than from physics. It is in these transitions, sunrise and sunset, that the truth of light reveals itself most beautifully. At dawn, before the world fully wakes, the sun hides just below the horizon. Its rays must travel through a thicker slice of atmosphere to reach your eyes, cutting across the edge of the planet rather than straight down from above. In that long journey, the shorter blue wavelengths are scattered away, diffused out into the upper sky, leaving behind the longer, warmer wavelengths of red and orange. That is why the sunrise glows in fire, while the upper heavens remain cool and pale. You might have noticed that the first light is not red at all, but a soft gray, a faint hint of silver spreading slowly across the east. That is the false dawn, sunlight scattered from high-altitude dust and ice crystals, a prelude before the true color arrives. Then, as the earth turns and the first edge of the sun appears, everything changes. The light catches clouds, trees, the surface of water. Shadows stretch long, gentle, almost blue themselves in contrast. The world feels new, as if freshly washed. Every sunrise is the same phenomenon, repeated endlessly since the planet formed. And yet each one is unique, because the air that filters the light is never the same twice. There might be dust from a desert storm a continent away, or salt from the sea, or smoke from a far-off fire. Each particle bends and scatters light differently, tinting the sky with subtle variations of pink, apricot, and violet. You could say that every dawn carries the fingerprints of the earth itself. As the sun climbs higher, The reds fade, replaced by gold, then by white. Soon the blue returns, not the deep midnight blue of pigment, but the soft, radiant blue of diffusion, created anew each morning by the dance of photons and air. It is easy to take for granted, but consider the precision required for this color to exist at all. The right density of atmosphere, the right kind of molecules, the right distance from the sun. A thinner atmosphere would yield a darker sky, a thicker one, a paler gray. If the composition were slightly different, more methane, say, as on Uranus, the sky might be turquoise or green. If we lived on Mars, we would watch salmon-colored skies and blue sunsets, for its dusty atmosphere scatters light differently. The blue of our sky, fragile and exact, belongs to Earth alone. When noon arrives, the sun stands nearly overhead. The air between you and space is now at its thinnest path. The light comes almost straight down, unfiltered. Shadows shrink, colors flatten. The sky seems bluer here than at any other time, an almost perfect azure. And yet it is also emptier. There is a quiet sterility in the midday sky, a stillness that feels almost eternal. It is the sky stripped to its essence, pure Rayleigh scattering, unsoftened by dusk or dawn. If you were to climb high into the mountains, the blue would darken further. At 20,000 feet, the sky becomes cobalt. At 40,000, nearly indigo. That is because you have less atmosphere above you to scatter light. With every step upward, you peel away layers of the illusion. From space, the sky disappears altogether. Astronauts describe it not as black, but as beyond color, a void so complete that it defies description. And when they return, they say the blue of Earth moves them to tears. It is not the hue itself that touches them, but what it represents. Home, air, life, the thin cradle that holds all of us suspended in the dark. By late afternoon, the world begins to tilt again. The sun lowers, the light grows warmer, and the shadows stretch long. If morning was a birth, afternoon is a slow exhale, the day leaning toward its own ending. Look up then, and you'll notice the blue has softened, its saturation draining toward pale. The scattering still happens, but now the sunlight's path through air is longer again. More blue light is lost to the distance. Gold begins to creep into the sky's edges. Clouds, once white, start to burn with orange. The air itself seems thicker, slower. There is something tender about this time, the hours when light changes its language. It is as if the sky, tired from holding its blue all day, begins to let go. Even the sounds of the world respond. Birds lower their songs, wind softens, the temperature cools. The day exhales, and in that breath, the sky glows. Sunset is not a single moment, but a process, a long, quiet surrender. As the sun dips lower, the blue above fades into a spectrum of warm hues. The short wavelengths scatter away completely, leaving the reds and oranges to dominate. The horizon catches them, reflecting their fire back into the clouds. For a few minutes, everything glows as if the air itself were aflame. And then comes twilight. First, the civil twilight, when the sun is just below the horizon, but its light still grazes the upper atmosphere. Then the nautical twilight, when the sky darkens enough for sailors to see the first stars and measure their bearings. Finally, astronomical twilight, when the sun's rays no longer reach the sky at all and the world falls into night. Each stage is a gradient of loss, a reminder that every color is temporary, a borrowed gift of geometry and time. The blue that once filled the sky fades into violet, then gray, and finally black. But the darkness is not absence, it is revelation. Only when the sky surrenders its color do we see what lies beyond it, the vastness of space, eternal and indifferent. Sometimes, at that edge of night, a thin band of color lingers, a luminous arch called the Belt of Venus. It glows rose-pink above the darkening horizon, opposite the sunset. What you're seeing is the Earth's own shadow rising up through the atmosphere. The sun's light, refracted and scattered, paints the boundary between night and day in delicate hues. It's a quiet phenomenon, easy to miss, yet profoundly humbling, the planet casting its own silhouette upon the air. As the stars appear, the illusion of the sky changes once again. It no longer feels near. At night, the sky becomes infinite, not a ceiling, but a window. The blue that once filled it has drained away, leaving transparency. And yet, the air is still there, still scattering, still bending starlight, though now so faintly that our eyes cannot see it. The stars twinkle because of that same scattering, tiny fluctuations of air density bending their light in random ways. Even at night, the atmosphere continues its quiet work, invisible and alive. If you stay awake long enough, you might see the faintest hint of blue return before dawn, the cycle beginning again. It is called the blue hour, that magical moment before sunrise and after sunset, when the sun is far enough below the horizon that its light turns the world cobalt. Photographers adore it, poets name it, lovers remember it. In that hour, the sky feels infinite but intimate, distant yet tender. It is as if the world is holding its breath between two realities, day and night, light and shadow, known and unknown. And this rhythm, this breathing of color, is older than life itself. Long before the first eyes evolved to see, the sky was scattering light, and molecules were playing their silent symphony of wavelengths, unnoticed. It was only with the arrival of perception that the performance gained an audience. When the first creatures developed light-sensitive cells, the universe, for the first time, saw itself reflected. Light had been traveling forever, but only now was there something to receive it, to make meaning of it. You are part of that lineage, a continuation of the cosmos learning to see itself. The rods and cones in your eyes are biological descendants of that first spark of awareness. They evolved not merely to detect light, but to interpret it, to turn energy into experience. When you see the blue of the sky, you are witnessing the history of sight itself. It is as if the universe, through you, is admiring its own reflection. And perhaps that is why the illusion feels so profound. Because in a sense, it is not just the sky that is not blue, it is perception itself that colors reality. Every color, every sound, every texture is a conversation between the world and your mind. The light waves are real, yes, but the color is your creation. Without a perceiver, there is no blue. There is only energy, indifferent and uncolored. This realization can feel unsettling, to know that what we see is not the world as it is, but as we are able to see it. But it can also be liberating, because it means that beauty is not confined to objects. It exists in the relationship between observer and observed. It means that every glance upward is a small act of creation. Think of this the next time you find yourself staring at the sky on a quiet afternoon. You are not merely looking at it, you are participating in it. Your eyes, your mind, your consciousness complete the picture. Without you, the sky would not be blue. It would not be anything at all. And that, in itself, is a kind of miracle. There is a moment, usually just before the stars fade in morning, when the horizon holds a secret shade, neither night nor day, neither blue nor black. It lasts only seconds, a ghost of color that refuses to be named. It's in that moment that you can sense the true nature of the sky, not a color, but a condition. A lens through which light passes, a veil between you and the infinite. The sky is not a thing, but a relationship between sun and air, between photon and eye, between existence and awareness. And perhaps that's what this entire illusion teaches us. That reality is not simply what is, but what happens between light and perception, between truth and interpretation, between the physical and the poetic. Every time you breathe, you are part of it. The air that scatters light is the same air that fills your lungs. You are, in a very literal sense, breathing the sky. The molecules that paint it blue also sustain your life. You and the sky are not separate things. You are made of the same breath. So the next time someone asks why the sky is blue, you might tell them this. It's not. It's colorless. But in that colorlessness lies a story of light, air, and consciousness. A story older than words, older than life. And to know that is not to spoil the beauty, but to deepen it. For when we understand that the sky's blue is an illusion, we do not lose wonder. We gain a new one, the wonder of knowing how such illusions are made and how they make us feel alive. The more we learn about the sky, the more we begin to realize something humbling, that seeing is not a passive act. It is not the world projecting itself onto us, but a quiet construction, built moment by moment within the mind. Light enters the eye, but sight arises within. To understand the illusion of the blue sky, we must look not only upward, but inward. Inside your eyes, tiny cells stand ready, cones and rods, the translators between the physical and the perceived. The rods are the watchers of the night, sensitive, monochromatic, attuned to the faintest glimmers. The cones are the painters of the day, 3 kinds, each responding to a different part of the spectrum. One loves long wavelengths, the reds. One favors the middle greens. One is devoted to the short, the blues. Together, they weave a tapestry of color that is not in the light itself, but in the interpretation of it. For what we call color is not a property of things. It is a conversation, a negotiation between photons and perception. When light of a certain wavelength strikes your retina, it sets off tiny electrical signals. Those signals are carried to the brain, where they are compared, balanced, interpreted. The world outside is waves. The world inside becomes meaning. And yet, this meaning is fragile. Different creatures see different skies. To a honeybee, the sky is rich in ultraviolet. To a cat, it is dull, desaturated, a world of muted contrast. To a bird, it shimmers with polarized light, invisible to us, but vital to navigation. The blue we see is not universal. It is uniquely human, a biological story written in the language of our evolution. Even among humans, perception varies subtly. No 2 eyes see exactly the same hue. No 2 brains interpret color in precisely the same way. And yet, we share words for them. We agree upon blue. We create a common sky out of private experiences. That agreement, that illusion of sameness, is one of the most beautiful acts of collective imagination we have. There is a quiet paradox at the heart of this. We live beneath the same sky, yet no one truly sees the same color. What we call reality is a shared hallucination, kept coherent by language and trust. And perhaps that's what holds civilization together, not the sky itself, but our agreement about its blueness. The ancient world, however, did not always share that agreement. If you were to travel back in time and ask a poet of Greece what color the sky was, they might have looked at you in confusion. For in their language, there was no word for blue. They saw it, surely, as they saw the sea, but they did not name it as we do. To Homer, the sea was wine dark, not azure. To ancient Hebrews, the sky was transparent as sapphire. But even sapphire was not quite the same hue we imagine today. In early Egyptian texts, the sky was green, a color of fertility and life. It is not that they were blind to blue. It is that language had not yet carved it out as distinct. The philosopher Guy Deutscher once observed that color terms in languages tend to appear in a pattern. First come words for black and white, light and dark, then red, then yellow or green, and only much later blue. Because blue is rare in nature. Outside of the sky and the depths of water, there are few natural blues. No blue minerals in abundance, no blue food, no blue in blood or earth. It was not until humans learned to extract pigments from stones like lapis lazuli and plants like indigo, that blue entered our vocabulary of vision. Lapis, deep and celestial, became sacred, a fragment of the sky itself, solidified in mineral form. Egyptians ground it into powder for paint and jewelry, their gods often depicted with blue skin, symbolizing divinity and eternity. In medieval Europe, blue was reserved for the robes of the Virgin Mary, a color of purity and reverence, more precious than gold. And even now, blue holds its power, the color of calm, of distance, of melancholy, of infinity. But all this, the emotion, the meaning, the sacredness, began with an illusion, a trick of scattering and sight. From illusion grew symbol, from symbol grew art, and from art, an entire emotional vocabulary. We have built our myths upon the physics of light. There's something almost tender about that. That the universe, indifferent and mechanical, can still give rise to something so deeply human. That our feelings, serenity, longing, transcendence, can emerge from air and sunlight. Perhaps this is what it means to live in a conscious universe. Not that the cosmos thinks, but that it allows beings like us to feel within it. The science of perception tells us that the color we see is the brain's best guess at reality. It is a construction optimized for survival, not truth. Our eyes evolved to find fruit, to read faces, to sense patterns, not to see the universe as it really is. And so, we are blind to much of it. We cannot see infrared, though snakes can. We cannot see ultraviolet, though bees can. We see only a narrow band of wavelengths, less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum, and call it visible light. Think of that, less than 1%. Everything you've ever known, every sunset, every painting, every sky, exists within that sliver. The rest, radio, microwaves, X-rays, gamma rays, passes through and around you, unseen, unimagined. And yet, in that narrow range, we find beauty enough to fill the soul. Perhaps that is the miracle, not that the sky is blue, but that our minds can turn such a small fragment of reality into something infinite. When light enters the atmosphere, it is scattered. When it enters the eye, it is transformed. When it enters the mind, it becomes meaning. A sky, therefore, is not only a product of physics, but of consciousness. It is both outside and inside you, half made of photons, half made of thought. It is strange, then, to think that what feels most universal, the sky above, is also the most personal. For no one else sees your exact shade of blue. No one else sees your sky as you do. Even at the level of physics, the light entering each person's eyes is slightly different, filtered through different air, different angles, different times of day. Each perception is unique, a private universe mirrored in the mind. And yet, we look upward together and find comfort in the illusion of unity. In that shared illusion lies community, empathy, art, and faith. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein once asked, "Can we imagine a language in which color sensations are not shared?" He meant that our experience of color, though subjective, gains its meaning only in relation to others. To call the sky blue is to say, "I see what you see." It is a statement of trust, of communion. The sky connects us not only through air, but through agreement. For as long as humans have existed, the sky has been a mirror of our minds. We have projected upon it our gods, our moods, our questions. Its changes became metaphors for our own. A bright sky, happiness. A dark one, sorrow. A storm, turmoil. A clear blue peace. The earliest astronomers gazed upward to map the heavens, but they were also mapping their own need for order. The constellations were not written in the stars. They were drawn by imagination. In the same way, the blue of the sky is not in the air. It is drawn by the mind. Every act of seeing is an act of drawing, a collaboration between reality and perception. The sky simply gives us the canvas. If you were to remove the atmosphere, strip away the air, the moisture, the dust, the sky would not fade to white. It would vanish into black. The blue would die, and the sun would become a brilliant, unfiltered disk, unbearably bright against the void. That thin layer of gases, nitrogen, oxygen, argon, trace water vapor, is all that stands between you and darkness. It not only allows you to breathe, it allows you to see beauty. The air is both your shield and your palette. Sometimes, late in the afternoon, when the light turns honey gold and everything glows at its edges, you can almost sense the fragility of it all. The atmosphere isn't permanent. It leaks slowly into space. It changes with time, with temperature, with the quiet exhalation of every living thing. Each breath you take participates in this endless cycle of giving and receiving, exhaling carbon dioxide, inhaling oxygen, exchanging molecules that will drift upward, scatter light, and someday paint the very sky you'll gaze at again. You breathe, and the world breathes through you. Perhaps that's why the blue sky feels alive, because in a way, it is. It is the signature of life interacting with light. Without an atmosphere, Earth would be as silent and colorless as the moon. Our sky, our weather, our color, they are all the visible evidence of air in motion, of a planet that still breathes. There is a strange poetry in this reciprocity. The sky gives us color. We give it breath. And together, we create beauty neither could achieve alone. When you stand beneath the open air, you are part of something immense, a system that turns sunlight into vision, chemistry into meaning. You are not merely under the sky. You are within it. It wraps around you, flows through you, defines every shade of your existence. We tend to think of the sky as distant, something above and apart. But really, the sky begins at the ground. The air that touches your skin, fills your lungs, rustles the leaves, that is sky. The only difference between the blue overhead and the invisible air around you is light. You are already inside the thing you look at. It's a gentle illusion, one that reminds us how easily we separate ourselves from what we are part of. We say, beneath the sky, as if it were a ceiling. But the truth is simpler and more profound. We are within the sky always. We live suspended in it like fish in the ocean, moving through its invisible depths. We belong to it utterly. And that, perhaps, is the quiet lesson the sky offers, that separation is an illusion too, that all boundaries dissolve in the right kind of light. The air we breathe becomes part of us, and we become part of the air. We are each small vessels of atmosphere, walking the earth and returning pieces of it with every breath. So the next time you look up, remember, you are looking not at the sky, but through it, through layers of air, through scattered sunlight, through the physics of perception, through the very veil that makes beauty possible. And behind that veil lies everything, the stars, the void, the silence of space. The blue is what keeps you from seeing the infinite too soon. If the sky were transparent black all day, perhaps we would never have survived as dreamers. Perhaps our minds, staring always into the abyss, would have become something colder, more cautious. But the blue gives us comfort. It hides the void and replaces it with something gentle, something that invites rather than terrifies. In its illusion, we find peace, and in that peace, we dream. We build our stories, our meanings, our lives, all beneath a sky that is not blue. Night arrives not as a sudden visitor, but as a slow unweaving of the day. The last strands of gold dissolve into the horizon, and what remains is the quiet undoing of color. The air cools. The light fades. And the sky, once full of endless expression, begins to fold itself into shadow. If the day belongs to sight, then the night belongs to listening. In the deepening dark, the hum of insects rises, the earth exhales moisture, and the stars begin their soft ceremony above. And here, when blue has gone and only darkness remains, we can finally ask, what is the sky when it is not blue at all? For most of human history, the night sky was the true face of heaven, a dome of shimmering lights scattered across unfathomable depth. Before cities and electricity, before street lamps and screens, people lived closer to that endless darkness. They saw the Milky Way stretch across the firmament like spilled salt, and they named constellations as if drawing stories into the void. To them, the night sky was not a ceiling. It was an ocean of spirits, gods, and eternal fires. But even that vast blackness is an illusion of light, or rather, the absence of it. The night sky is not black at all. If our eyes could perceive the faint glow of the cosmos, the residual afterburn of creation, the cosmic microwave background, we would see that the universe itself hums with light. Every direction, every shadow, every patch of what looks like emptiness is filled with photons too faint for our vision. Darkness, then, is simply what happens when light escapes us. The color of the sky is not about the sky itself. It's about us. Our eyes, evolved in the narrow window of visible light, see only a tiny fraction of what the universe emits. Bees see ultraviolet patterns hidden on flowers. Snakes sense heat in infrared. Even the mantis shrimp, that alien of the sea, perceives a rainbow of polarization we can only imagine. To each creature, the world is painted differently, a private gallery of perception shaped by need and evolution. Humans, for all our complexity, live inside a sliver of perception. We call it reality, but it is only a translation, a filtered poem of light and color written for our particular kind of eye. And the sky, that great blue curtain, is one of the most eloquent verses in that poem. It is worth pausing here, breathing slowly, and noticing the simplicity of it. Color is not something that exists out there. It is the language our brain uses to make sense of wavelengths, to turn vibration into beauty. Blue, in truth, is just short wavelength light scattered by air molecules. But to our minds, it feels like openness, calm, infinity. The physics of it is ordinary, but the feeling of it, that spacious tranquility, is profound. That is the strange generosity of nature. It builds wonder out of what is, at heart, mechanical. A process as simple as scattering becomes a daily miracle. And that miracle changes subtly throughout the day, in a choreography it never repeats. When the sun begins to rise again, light returns in stages, violet first, too faint for most eyes to see, then blue, then orange and gold. Each color tells us something about the journey of light, how it bends through thicker air near the horizon, how the red wavelengths travel farther while the blues scatter away, how our planet's curve filters and recomposes what we perceive. The dawn is not just the beginning of day, it is the reassembly of the visible world. Every morning, the sky rebuilds itself from invisible ingredients, photons, air, and human perception. It's as though the universe is painting again on a blank canvas of darkness. Look closely at those first rays that touch the upper atmosphere. They are 8 minutes old. To be precise, the time it takes light to travel from the sun to Earth. In those 8 minutes, empires rise and fall in miniature, lives unfold, thoughts are born. And yet the light remains patient, crossing 93 million miles just to scatter in our air, just to become the color of our morning. This is the poetry hidden in physics, that the sky's blue is ancient sunlight broken into fragments, that every color we see is an echo of something that happened moments ago, and that even now, as we look up, we are watching the past arrive. The idea that the sky is not blue is both scientific and philosophical. Scientifically, the color depends on scattering, on how air molecules like nitrogen and oxygen deflect shorter wavelengths of light more efficiently than longer ones. Philosophically, it reminds us that the color is not intrinsic to the sky itself, but to the way we perceive it. Blue is a conversation between light and the human eye. In ancient times, this was not an obvious truth. The Greeks, for instance, rarely described the sky as blue. In Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, The sea is called wine dark, the sky bronze. Scholars once puzzled over this absence, wondering if the ancients saw color differently, or if language itself shaped what they noticed. Perhaps before the word blue was common, the idea of blueness itself was undefined, a color hidden in plain sight. Even now, there's a lesson in that. What we have no words for, we rarely see clearly. Perception and language are intertwined. We speak the world into focus. The sky's color, then, is not just a property of light, but of consciousness. It becomes blue only when mind and matter agree to meet. This is what makes the sky such an enduring metaphor for awareness. It is boundless, yet always present. It changes constantly, yet never truly disappears. And just like consciousness, it has no surface you can touch, only a sense of infinite extension. At noon, when the sun stands high, the blue becomes deeper, almost saturated. That is when Rayleigh scattering works in full strength, when sunlight passes through less atmosphere, and the shorter wavelengths dominate our view. If you climb a mountain or fly in an airplane, the blue grows darker, approaching indigo, because the higher you go, the less air there is to scatter light. Above it all, space begins, not with a line, but with a slow fading. From there, astronauts describe something striking. The transition from sky to void is not abrupt. It is a gradient, a dissolving blue that deepens into velvet black. Looking down, Earth itself glows faintly with scattered light, while above, the stars remain constant, sharp, unblinking. They say the experience reorders one's sense of scale, a phenomenon now called the overview effect. To see the sky's blue fade into nothingness is to realize that everything we know lives within that thin, fragile film of air. It humbles you, they say. It reminds you that the blue dome we call heaven is not a ceiling, but a veil. Behind it lies the infinite. When you stand on the ground and look up, you are looking through miles of air. Each layer bends, scatters, and diffuses light slightly differently. The blue above you is not the same as the blue on the horizon. The horizon's light travels through more atmosphere, scattering so much that it whitens, mixing with dust and haze. That's why the zenith, the point directly overhead, always feels like the purest blue, while the edges of the sky are paler, almost silver. And yet, if you could see from space, the Earth would appear rimmed with blue at the edge, a halo of atmosphere, sunlight diffused at the border between day and night. That edge, called the limb of the Earth, is where sunrise and sunset perpetually dance. It is where the planet holds its breath between illumination and darkness. In that thin line of color lies every dawn and every twilight that has ever been. Every poem about morning light, every prayer whispered at dusk, every gaze turned skyward with wonder, all of it refracted in the same physics that makes the sky blue. This is what connects us: the science of scattering, the biology of vision, the language of awe. Together, they create the shared illusion we call the sky. And yet, illusion is not falsehood. It is a collaboration between truth and perception, the meeting point of what exists and how we experience it. The blue of the sky is not a lie. It is a translation, a truth spoken in a language we can see. If you lie back now and simply watch, you might notice something else. Even within that blue, there is movement, not of clouds, but of color itself. As the hours pass, the hue shifts almost imperceptibly. Morning blue is not the same as afternoon blue. Each carries a different temperature, a different quality of light. Painters spend lifetimes trying to capture that difference, the soft cerulean of early day, the crystalline azure of noon, the deep cobalt that precedes twilight. Each one speaks of time, of atmosphere, of emotion. The sky is the world's slowest, largest canvas, and every day it paints anew. As the sun begins its descent, the colors stretch again, scattering more and more red and orange as light passes through thicker air. Rayleigh scattering gives way to me scattering, a process involving larger particles like dust and water droplets. That's why sunsets often glow with fire. The particles catch the longer wavelengths, turning the horizon into embers. But even that red glow is temporary, fading quickly into violet, then gray, then dark. The cycle resets. Blue is born, lives, and dies each day, a color made and unmade by light. And in that endless rhythm lies a quiet lesson. Beauty is often an accident of impermanence. The sky's blue exists only because light takes the long way through air. It is fragile, fleeting, dependent on angle, atmosphere, and attention. And yet it feels eternal. That paradox of the eternal, made from the temporary, is what makes the sky such a gentle teacher. It reminds us that perception is not the whole of truth, and that even illusions can hold meaning. When we say the sky is blue, what we really mean is, the light scattered above me looks blue to my eyes, in this moment, under these conditions. And yet that sentence, so simple, carries the full weight of existence. Because everything we see, everything we feel, is filtered through the same condition, the meeting of the world and the self. The blue is real enough to move us, to calm us, to fill us with peace. It may not exist as pigment or surface, but it exists as experience, and experience is what makes a life. Perhaps then, it doesn't matter that the sky is not blue. What matters is that we look up and feel something, awe, tranquility, connection. Because every time we look at the sky, at its changing moods and colors, we are reminded that seeing is not just about eyes. It is about awareness. It is about wonder. And wonder, like the sky, is something we make together. Light scattered through the atmosphere of being alive. Long before anyone knew the word photon, before light was measured, named, or divided into wavelengths, the sky was already the oldest mystery. To look upward was to ask a question the earth could not answer. What is that endless thing above us, that shifting, breathing expanse that holds both the sun and the storm? It was not blue to them. It was not even color, in the way we think of color. It was simply heaven, a realm apart, eternal and divine. In every culture, the sky was the first canvas of meaning. The Babylonians imagined it as a great dome of stone, separating the waters above from the waters below. To the Egyptians, it was the goddess Nut, her body stretched across the world, stars glittering on her skin, swallowing the sun each night to give birth to it again at dawn. The Greeks called it Uranus, the father of all things, or sometimes the vault of crystal that encased the world. The Norse imagined Yggdrasil, the great world tree, whose crown brushed the very sky, binding the heavens to the earth. In every myth, the sky was alive. It breathed, it felt, it listened. Thunder was its voice, lightning its sudden emotion, rain its tears. And when the clouds parted to reveal a bright and gentle day, people felt the smile of gods. Back then, the color of the sky was not a question of physics, but of divinity. Blue was a sacred pigment, rare, precious, almost impossible to create. The Egyptians ground lapis lazuli into powder, mixing it with oils and resins to paint the crowns of pharaohs and the robes of gods. To them, that deep blue was not a simple hue. It was eternity made visible. Across the deserts of Mesopotamia, artisans stared upward and saw the same vast expanse, unending, luminous. But they did not call it blue. In Sumerian tablets, the sky is described as bright, radiant, clear. There was no single word for the color itself. Perhaps they didn't need one. The experience of looking upward was enough. It's easy to forget that language itself evolves from what people notice most. To cultures surrounded by oceans or forests, color words bloom early. But in the earliest languages, blue came last. Red, black, white. These are primal, tied to fire, night, bone, and blood. Blue, by contrast, is elusive. It's rare in nature. No blue food to eat, no blue animals to hunt, no blue minerals easy to find. It was a color that existed mostly above, in the unreachable. Even in the oldest parts of the Hebrew Bible, the sky is called rakia, the firmament, stretched out like hammered metal. The word blue is never used. When the priests described the curtains of the temple as teklik, the color meant something between deep sea and divine light, a mystery, not a measurement. For thousands of years, blue belonged not to painters or scientists, but to the sacred. Then came the philosophers. In ancient Greece, thinkers began to look at the heavens not only with reverence, but with reason. Anaximander, around 600 BCE, suggested that the sky was a hollow ring of fire, hidden behind a layer of mist. Heraclitus believed the sky's color came from evaporations, the transformation of earth and water into air and flame. Aristotle imagined that air itself, when illuminated by the sun, produced the blue of the sky, a simple and elegant guess, wrong in its physics, but right in its poetry. For more than 2,000 years, Aristotle's idea would endure. The sky was blue, people believed, because air had a color of its own, faint but visible when lit. Even the great thinkers of the Renaissance accepted this. It seemed obvious, intuitive, true to experience. It would take the slow birth of modern science and the patient study of light to unravel the illusion. In the 17th century, Isaac Newton began to play with prisms. He passed sunlight through glass and discovered that white light could be split into its colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Then, just as astonishingly, he found that when he recombined them, the white returned. Light, he realized, contained all color. The sky was not painting the sunlight, it was sculpting it. But Newton stopped short of explaining why the blue dominated the heavens. He knew that light could be divided, but not yet why some parts of it scattered more than others. That answer would come a century later from a man named Lord Rayleigh, John William Strutt, who studied how waves of different lengths interact with particles much smaller than themselves. He discovered that the shorter, bluer wavelengths are scattered far more intensely than the longer reds. Air molecules, nitrogen, oxygen, act like tiny prisms, bouncing those short waves in every direction. The result: a dome of diffused blue light, visible from every point on Earth. It was a revelation not just of science, but of perception. The sky, it turned out, was colorless. Its blue was a side effect, an echo of sunlight playing in the air. Think about that. The bluest thing we know is, in truth, the color of emptiness. A pigmentless phenomenon, born of light's restlessness. In another kind of world, with a thicker atmosphere, or a different star, the sky might be violet, or pale green, or even red. Blue is not universal. It is local. It is Earth's signature. When that truth emerged, some people felt wonder. Others felt disappointment. The mystery of heaven had been reduced to scattering and equations. But science, when seen rightly, doesn't erase wonder. It refines it. To know that every hue in the sky is a pattern written by the physics of light is to glimpse a deeper poetry, the poetry of reality itself. Still, the heart resists abstraction. For poets and painters, blue remained the color of longing. When the chemists of the 18th and 19th centuries finally learned to synthesize it, Prussian blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine, it transformed art. The Impressionists took it as their muse. Monet's skies shimmered with it, endless and alive. Van Gogh's nights pulsed with it, a color that seemed to breathe. And in each brushstroke there was still the echo of that ancient question: what is the sky? Even as science advanced, the emotional truth of blue deepened. In language, in music, in mood, blue became the color of introspection, of melancholy, of calm. A strange irony. The same wavelength that speaks of clarity and openness also speaks of sadness. Perhaps that's fitting. The sky, after all, contains every weather, joy and sorrow, sunlight and storm, and blue is its most human mask. Yet beyond emotion, the science continued. In the 20th century, with telescopes peering farther into the cosmos, humanity learned that the sky, even at its blackest, still glows faintly. The night is not empty, but filled with the afterlight of creation. The cosmic microwave background, a whisper from the Big Bang, fills every corner of space with invisible warmth. Even the darkness carries the memory of brightness. To the human eye, the blue of the day and the black of night are opposites. But to the universe, they are simply variations of light, one visible, one beyond our reach. It is only our perception that divides them, names them, and gives them feeling. And in that, there is something beautiful. Because the story of the sky is the story of learning to see, of understanding that what we witness is shaped as much by the observer as by the observed. We built myths, then theories, then equations. But beneath it all lies the same impulse, to look upward and to wonder. Each generation added a layer of comprehension, not replacing the mystery, but enriching it. When we stopped believing the sky was a god, we began to understand it as light. When we learned it was not blue in itself, we discovered the subtler truth, that beauty can exist in illusion. There is in that a kind of humility. The more we learn, the more the sky reveals itself as both knowable and unknowable. We can measure its composition, calculate scattering, model spectra, and still, when we step outside on a clear morning, we feel awe. Not because we don't understand, but because we do. And yet the understanding changes nothing of its grace. Knowledge, when held gently, becomes reverence. And that, perhaps, is the great arc of this story. From myth to mathematics, from worship to wonder, we have never truly stopped seeing the sky as sacred. We have only changed the language of our devotion. To the ancients, it was divine. To the physicist, it is scattering. To the dreamer, it is endlessness. All of them are right. The sky is not blue, and yet it is, because blue is not a thing to be proven. It is a thing to be felt. It is the meeting point between sunlight and soul, between matter and meaning. It is the color of understanding itself, infinite, shifting, alive. Night is the slowest kind of transformation. It does not arrive. It gathers. Somewhere in the folds of the afternoon, in the faintest thinning of light, the evening begins its patient work. The blue, that radiant illusion of the day, starts to tremble at its edges, growing deeper, more solemn, more uncertain. Shadows lengthen, not as the absence of light, but as its soft retreat. If you look long enough at the western horizon, you can almost see the change happening, a shift too slow for time to notice, but too real to ignore. The air cools. The colors thicken. The blue folds itself into violet, and violet into a fading warmth that seems to hum from the earth itself. What we call sunset is not a single thing. It is a process, a slow surrender of scattered light. When the sun slides lower in the sky, its rays must travel through more of the atmosphere to reach us. More air, more molecules, more dust and vapor. The short wavelengths, the blues and violets, are scattered away, leaving behind the longer, heavier waves, reds, oranges, golds. This is why the sun bleeds at the end of the day. It is not dying. It is deepening. The light that reaches your eyes at sunset has lived a longer journey than any other light of the day. It has been bent and filtered, softened and reddened by miles of invisible collisions. Every color you see is a record of that travel, a diary of photons that have brushed against the world before reaching you. And yet, for all its explanation, the sight still moves us. There is something in the fading sky that feels ancient and personal, as if we've seen it before in 1,000 forgotten evenings. Perhaps because the sunset reminds us of cycles too large to hold in mind. The earth turning, the day closing, the promise of rest. Evening arrives like a tide that cannot be resisted. The first stars appear in the east, shy and uncertain, as though peeking through the last fragments of color. Venus glows low, the planet of love and reflection, bright enough to challenge the twilight. The sky now becomes a canvas of in-between hues, neither day nor night, but a living gradient of everything between. If you've ever watched the sky in this hour, you know it doesn't simply darken. It breathes. It seems to pulse, deepening in slow waves of color. The blue that once felt solid and certain now melts into purples and grays, into the smoky tones of a sky remembering the sun. And as the darkness settles, something curious happens to the blue itself. It disappears not into black, but into transparency. The sky does not go dark. It simply reveals what it was hiding. Above us, the air was never truly blue. It was only scattering, a veil painted by light, made visible by the day's brilliance. When the sun leaves, the scattering fades. The canvas clears, and what remains is the deep infinity of space, a darkness not of absence, but of vastness. Astronomers call it air glow, the faint, ghostly light that still lingers in the upper atmosphere long after sunset. Even in the dark, the sky glows ever so slightly, a reminder that the world never truly turns off its light. The molecules high above still hum with energy, releasing soft photons of green and red, whispers of oxygen and nitrogen, singing their quiet lullabies to the night. If you lie down and watch the first true darkness arrive, you can feel the earth exhale. The warmth of the day lifts upward, dissolving into the cooling air. The crickets begin their metronome, and somewhere far off, the last bird calls to the dusk. The stars emerge not suddenly, but like memories. One, then two, then a scattered constellation of silver mines. They seem eternal, but even their light is a story of delay. What you see is old. Every star is a letter from the past, written in light years. It's easy to forget, looking at them, that they are suns too, each with their own skies, their own scattering, perhaps even their own beings looking up and wondering why the heavens are what they are. From this distance, the illusion of our blue sky feels small and beautiful, a trick of perspective in a universe that glows in every color, every frequency, seen and unseen. The night teaches us humility. It reminds us that our sense of color is fragile, a local truth, born from the thin film of gas clinging to our world. Remove the air, and the blue is gone. Remove the eye, and color itself ceases to exist. This is the quiet revelation hidden in the sky. Color is not out there. It is here, inside us. The sky is not blue. It never was. It is light scattered through air, interpreted by perception, translated by mind. Without our eyes, the sky would be nothing but a transparent void. Without light, even the air would vanish from view. And yet, what a beautiful illusion it is. When the day dies and the stars bloom, you realize the universe does not hide its secrets. It only waits for us to look in the right way. The ancients looked up and saw gods, vast deities swimming through the heavens, weaving stories of creation and destruction. The Greeks imagined the dome of Uranus. The Egyptians believed the goddess Nut arched her star-studded body across the world. In every culture, the sky was alive, not an atmosphere, but a spirit. Perhaps they weren't wrong. Because to feel the sky, to truly look and feel its immensity, is to sense something that transcends language. Even if we know the science, the feeling remains. A quiet awe that cannot be reduced to scattering equations. As darkness deepens, our eyes adjust. Rod cells awaken, trading color for clarity. The blue fades completely now, replaced by shades of silver and shadow. The Milky Way arches across the zenith, a soft, grainy river of light, the skeleton of our galaxy. Here, color becomes something else, not a property of light, but a memory of it. The brain paints what it cannot see. The black between stars is not truly black. It is the absence of reflected light, a silence where photons do not speak. And yet even there, the faintest particles hum, cosmic rays, background radiation, the ancient afterglow of creation itself. The night, for all its darkness, is never truly empty. If you listen, not with your ears, but with your patience, you can almost hear the gentle hum of existence, the low murmur of atoms, cosmic rhythm of everything still glowing faintly from the beginning of time. It is said that the color blue is the rarest in nature. Few plants, few minerals, few animals possess it. The pigments that mimic blue often rely on structure, microscopic arrangements that scatter light, much like the sky itself. Even a butterfly's wing or a peacock's feather owes its blue to illusion, to the bending of light through air, or keratin, or chitin. So the sky shares kinship with wings and water, all mirrors of the same trick, the same poetry of scattering. It is as though the universe chose to reserve blue for light itself, not as a substance, but as a way of being seen. When you look at the sky tomorrow, remember, you are not seeing color. You are seeing the conversation between sunlight and air, the infinite made visible through scattering and perception. Every shade, every gradient, every pale noon or deep twilight is the trace of that dialogue, a reminder that beauty is not in things themselves, but in the relationship between them. Perhaps that is why the blue of the sky feels so calm, because it mirrors our own search for clarity. We too are made of scattered light. We too exist in reflection, shaped by what passes through and around us. And in this way, perhaps the sky is not just above us, it is within us, a mirror of perception, a map of the mind, an illusion that reveals a truth, that even the most familiar things are more wondrous than we dare to imagine. The night deepens, and in that deepening, the world seems to grow quieter, not because sound has stopped, but because attention has turned inward. The sky, once a spectacle of color, now becomes an invisible presence, a dark expanse that does not demand to be seen, only felt. It is here, in this hush, that we begin to ask a quieter kind of question. What does it mean to see? When the sun rises again, it brings not only light, but color, and yet neither exists without the mind to receive it. Light, in its purest form, is colorless. A photon knows nothing of red or blue. It travels as an electric field and a magnetic one, bound together in motion, a wave of possibility that only becomes color when it meets an eye, a brain, a consciousness that can interpret it. Our eyes are not windows, but translators. They take the formless vibrations of the universe and turn them into meaning. Inside each human eye are about 6 million cones, tiny cells tuned to wavelengths of light. Some favor the long waves we call red, others the middle waves of green, others the shorter waves of blue. Together, they weave a tapestry of perception, so detailed and so constant that we forget it is not the world itself, but an interpretation. What we call blue is not in the sky. It is in us, a sensation produced by the particular way those cone cells respond to the scattered light above. When sunlight meets air, the shorter wavelengths are deflected in all directions. When those waves reach our eyes, the cones that love blue awaken, and the brain, ever the poet, fills in the rest. It names what it cannot truly know. Blue, then, is a creation, a fiction that feels real, a story written by physics, translated by biology, and believed by consciousness. If we could trade eyes with another creature, the world would transform entirely. To a bee, the sky might shimmer with ultraviolet light, invisible to us, yet radiant in patterns beyond our comprehension. To a bird, whose vision extends far into that ultraviolet spectrum, the air might seem woven with delicate threads of color we cannot imagine. To a dog, with fewer cones and a simpler palette, the sky may appear pale or even gray, its beauty written in scent and movement instead of hue. And to a nocturnal creature, a fox, an owl, a bat, color itself might vanish altogether, replaced by brightness and shadow, by contrast and warmth. Each living thing sees the world differently. Each carries its own version of the sky. It is a humbling truth. There is no single sky. There are as many skies as there are eyes to behold them. When the first humans looked upward, they saw not wavelength or scattering, but mystery. They saw stories. The Greeks imagined Zeus painting the heavens with divine fire. The Norse saw the dome made from the skull of a primordial giant. To the Navajo, the sky was the home of sacred beings who breathed the rhythm of the world. In ancient Egypt, Nut stretched across the earth, her skin studded with stars. All of them, in their own way, tried to describe what light was doing, not in equations, but in myths. They felt the sky's power before they could name it. Centuries later, when philosophers began to question the nature of color, they realized that seeing is not simple at all. Plato thought color was a kind of fire emanating from the eye, meeting light in the air. Aristotle believed it was born from the blending of darkness and brightness. It took thousands of years, through optics and experiments, through Newton's prism and the mathematics of light, to understand what was really happening. Newton showed that white light is not pure. It is everything. When he passed sunlight through a prism, he found that it fractured into a spectrum: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. He called these the fundamental colors, the ingredients of vision itself. But even he knew that color was not a property of light alone. It was a property of perception. Light is the stimulus. Color is the response. And that response depends on who is looking. If we could see in infrared, the world would glow with heat. If we could see in radio waves, the air around us would dance with invisible patterns of communication. If we could see in gamma rays, everything would be too violent, too fast, too bright to bear. We are tuned, perfectly and delicately, to a narrow band of the possible, a visible spectrum, and within that tiny slice, we build our world. It is a kind of blindness, but also a kind of mercy. We see just enough to wonder. When sunlight enters the eye, it begins an invisible chain of miracles. Photons strike the retina, transforming molecules in the cones. Those molecules change shape, sending electrical signals down neural pathways that merge, compare, and translate. The brain takes those streams of impulses and constructs the illusion of color, not as a simple reflection of light, but as a feeling. Blue is not just wavelength. It is calm. It is distance, melancholy, serenity. It is the color of silence and space, of open air and stillness. It has emotional gravity, a weight that cannot be measured, but is deeply felt. Perhaps this is why the sky's color has always carried meaning. When we say feeling blue, we are not wrong. The color mirrors something within us, a quiet state of awareness, a longing, a clarity tinged with sadness. In many languages, the word for blue arrived late. In Homer's Odyssey, the sea was described as wine dark. The sky was never blue. It was bronze, or black, or shimmering. Some linguists believe that early humans did not see blue as we do now, not because their eyes were different, but because their minds had not yet learned to name it. And what we cannot name, we rarely notice. Color, then, is not just biology. It is language. It is culture and consciousness, intertwined. The Himba people of Namibia, for example, divide the spectrum differently. They have many words for green, few for blue. When shown a circle of green tiles with one blue among them, many Himba observers struggle to distinguish it, not because they cannot see it, but because their language has not carved that distinction into perception. Yet, when shown subtle variations of green that look identical to us, they can easily tell them apart. Our minds are shaped by the words we use. Our skies, too, are colored by language, so the sky is not blue, not truly. It is only blue in the space between light and mind, between what exists and what is perceived. It is an agreement between physics and consciousness. There is something quietly profound about this. We live our lives beneath a sky that is, in every sense, imaginary. We love it, we paint it, we write songs to it, and all the while it exists only in perception, a masterpiece of illusion made possible by scattering, by biology, by thought. In this way, the sky is both real and unreal. It exists as light and as meaning. It lives in the same space as dreams and memories, as the colors of imagination. If we could step outside our senses, if we could see the world as it is, not as it appears, there would be no color at all, no blue, no red, no gold, only waves, energy, vibration. The world would be transparent and perhaps unbearably silent. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the sky's beauty lies precisely in its unreality, in the way it reveals how perception creates the world. It teaches us that seeing is not passive. It is participation. Every glance upward is an act of creation. And so, when you look up tomorrow and see that endless blue stretching across the horizon, remember, you are not just observing light. You are completing it. You are the final piece of the equation, the consciousness that turns physics into beauty. The sun rises again. The first hint of dawn glows faintly on the edge of the horizon. The blue returns, delicate and gradual, painting itself back into existence. This time, you notice the layers, the pale cyan near the ground, the deeper indigo above, the soft gradient that seems to have no boundary at all. It is not a solid dome, but a gradient of perception, an optical silence that stretches infinitely, and yet feels intimate, close, almost personal. As the light strengthens, so too does the illusion. Blue floods the atmosphere once more. Photons scatter, cones awaken, the mind receives and interprets, and the sky becomes what we remember it to be. Every morning, this miracle repeats. The world reassembles itself through sight. The unseen becomes visible, and the visible becomes meaningful. And though we understand it, though we can explain it with math and optics and evolution, the beauty does not fade. If anything, knowledge deepens wonder. To know why the sky is blue is to marvel at how delicate, how improbable, that blue truly is. A billion molecules of air, dancing in sunlight. A thin veil of scattering, just the right thickness to tint the day. A brain evolved to find beauty in color. Everything conspires to create this illusion. And we, standing beneath it, call it home. Perhaps that is the final truth the sky offers. That illusion and truth are not opposites. They are partners in perception, two halves of the same act of seeing. The sky is not blue, and yet it is. It always will be, because we are here to see it that way. The blue has returned, thin and tender, after night's long stillness. You might think the story of this color began with light, but in truth it began with longing. Long before equations and glass prisms, long before names like wavelength or spectrum, people simply looked upward and wondered what it meant. The first skies were stories. They were ceilings for gods, paths for spirits, maps for fate. In the valleys of the Nile, the sky was the goddess Nut, her body arching over the world, speckled with stars like seeds of eternity. Each morning she gave birth to the sun. Each night she swallowed it again. To the Mesopotamians, the heavens were a great ocean, turned upside down a sea, held in place by divine order. The Sumerians called it An, a shining dome from which rain and judgment fell. They did not ask why the sky was blue. They asked who had made it so. In Greece, the question changed shape but not feeling. There the word Uranus meant both sky and heaven, a single space for both air and divinity. When thunder rolled, it was Zeus speaking. When dawn blushed, it was Eos unfurling her rosy fingers. Blue itself had no word, and Homer saw only bronze, iron, wine. Color was not property but emotion. It lived in the heart, not the air. Across the world, other heavens glowed. In China, the sky was Tian, both the vault above and the principle of order. In the Andes, it was the realm of Inti, the sun, father of light. Among the aboriginal peoples of Australia, the sky was a vast plain where ancestral beings walked, their movements etching constellations. To the Polynesians, it was not dome, but depth and navigational sea, made of wind and star. Each vision revealed more about the observer than the observed. The sky was mirror. It reflected the structure of belief, the shape of fear, the reach of imagination. Only when human thought turned inward, when curiosity replaced obedience, did the heavens begin to empty of gods and fill with questions. The first natural philosophers of Greece, Thales, Anaximenes, Democritus, looked upward and saw matter. They imagined the blue as vapor, as mist made luminous by the sun. Air became substance, not spirit. Anaximenes proposed that the sky was formed by air condensed and set aflame. Democritus thought the heavens shone because of fiery atoms dancing above. They were wrong, of course, but beautifully wrong close enough to feel the truth pressing through. Centuries later, Aristotle refined the thought. He said the air above was pure and the earth below corrupt. Color, he wrote, was born from the mingling of light and darkness. The sky appeared blue because the air, though transparent, possessed a faint shadow of night. It was a theory of harmony more than of optics, but it held for nearly 2,000 years. Through the Middle Ages, scholars and monks carried Aristotle's sky like scripture. They copied it into illuminated manuscripts, each drawing of heaven gilded with lapis lazuli, an earthly blue more precious than gold. The pigment came from distant Afghanistan, ground from the rock lazurite, mixed with honey or oil, brushed into the robes of saints and the robes of Mary. In this way, blue became holy. It was the color of purity, of distance, of unreachable things. The mineral sky of paint replaced the open sky above. Devotion became color. Yet even faith leaves room for curiosity. In the Islamic world, astronomers turned their instruments toward the firmament and began to measure. Al-Hazen, in the 10th century, studied light not as miracle but as geometry. He built dark chambers with tiny holes, watched the inverted world form on a wall, and realized that vision was not rays sent outward from the eyes, but light entering them. In that quiet reversal, modern seeing was born. Then came the age of glass. Lenses curved, telescopes stretched, and the sky began to reveal what it truly was. Not dome, but distance. When Galileo turned his instrument upward, the blue dissolved into stars, too many to count, too near to believe. He saw the moon's craters, the Milky Way's dust, the wandering planets lit by reflected sun. And in that revelation, the heavens lost their boundary. If the sky contained worlds, then the sky was not ceiling but field. And if it was field, then perhaps color was not property, but perspective. Newton followed, standing in his darkened room, a blade of sunlight slanting through the shutter. He caught it in a prism and watched it break. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, an ordered spectrum from one white beam. He held the secret of rainbows in his hand and proved that color is woven into light itself. Yet even Newton's clarity was not final. He could measure the refraction, but not the reason why air preferred blue for the sky and red for the dawn. That explanation would wait for the 19th century, when physics itself learned to breathe. John Tyndall, experimenting with light in jars of smoke, noticed that shorter wavelengths scattered more. And then came Lord Rayleigh, who gave the effect its name and its mathematics. He described how molecules, far smaller than the wavelength of light, deflect the shorter, bluer waves more efficiently than the longer reds. The sky, he wrote, is blue because of scattering, because the air is full of invisible prisms. At last, The mystery that had worn the faces of gods and angels was reduced to simple proportion. But even as science explained, wonder persisted. Knowing how did not quiet the question of why it feels so beautiful, for beauty does not dissolve under understanding. It grows clearer. To realize that the blue above is born of collisions, that every photon has been jostled by the breath of the planet, is to sense intimacy in immensity. It means the light touching your face has spoken with air, has mingled with molecules that yesterday belonged to oceans or leaves, or the exhalation of someone far away. Each shade of sky is a record of connection. As centuries turned, poets adapted where priests once spoke. Goethe, who mistrusted Newton's cold precision, saw color as a living dialogue between light and darkness. He called blue a receding color, one that draws the soul after it. He wrote that the eye feels itself attracted by this color as by something infinite. In that single line he restored the sky to feeling. Painters followed the same intuition. Vermeer trapped daylight in tiny rooms, making air itself visible. Turner set storms ablaze, dissolving ships in luminous haze. Van Gogh turned the night into movement, swirling the heavens into music. Each brushstroke was an argument with science, an insistence that emotion, too, is a form of truth. By the 20th century, when airplanes began to rise above the clouds, people saw for the first time that the sky's blue thins with altitude, fading into black. The astronauts who crossed that line spoke of awe and vertigo. The color we call ordinary vanished within minutes of ascent. Above 40 kilometers, the scattering grows weak. The air no longer paints. Beyond, there is only the raw brilliance of unfiltered sun and the velvet void behind it. The sky, stripped of atmosphere, ceases to exist. And yet, when those travelers returned, they said the blue below looked dearer than ever. It was the color of life, of breath, of home. From orbit, the Earth's thin halo of air glowed like a fragile jewel, a single line of azure protecting everything that dreams and moves. What had been illusion became miracle again. So the story circles back, from gods to gases, from myth to molecule, from mystery to measurement, and finally to reverence once more. Every explanation births another wonder. The farther we see, the more the sky teaches humility. Because what we truly learned, after all those centuries, is not that the sky is blue, but that it could have been otherwise. Had our sun burned cooler, the scattering would favor green. Had our air been thicker, the world might live beneath a crimson haze. Had our eyes evolved with different pigments, our memories of childhood might be filled with yellow afternoons or violet dawns. Our sky, as we know it, is an accident of physics and perception a coincidence, so precise it feels chosen. Think of that when you watch the morning climb. Think of the chain that joins you to it. Hydrogen forged in stars, fused into sunlight, scattered by nitrogen, interpreted by neurons, named by language, felt by soul. A path of causation that reads like a poem. And through it all, the color remains soft, elusive, slightly melancholic, as if it remembers every story ever told beneath it. The myths are gone, the equations stay, but the feeling endures. We stand beneath the same blue that once covered pyramids and temples, wars and weddings, fields and city streets. It has watched every version of humanity look up and wonder. Perhaps that is what gives the sky its real color, memory. A layer of meanings added over millennia, invisible but present, tinting the light with all that has been believed. When you look upward, you are seeing not only photons, but history itself, diffused through air. In that sense, the sky is humanity's oldest mirror. It shows us not what is above, but what we imagine there. And in every age, it reflects the same question. What are we doing here, beneath all this light? The answer, like the color, changes with the hour. At dawn, it is hope. At noon, clarity. At dusk, surrender. At night, silence. The sky is not blue. It is the story we tell to remind ourselves that beauty can arise from emptiness, that meaning can live in air. There comes a moment in every day when the light pauses. Between the gold of evening and the gray of night, there is a breath, brief, fragile, and easily missed. The air holds still, and the sky seems to wonder what color it should be next. That hesitation is twilight, and it is in this moment that the illusion of blue finally lets go. The sun sinks low, and its light must travel farther through the atmosphere to reach us. Each photon, once scattered gently through the air, now tumbles through thicker layers of molecules and dust. The shorter blue wavelengths are filtered away, leaving the long red and orange ones to dominate. The world burns softly in color, not with flame, but with distance. What we see as sunset is the horizon of scattering, stretched to its limits. If you could stand outside the planet and watch it turn, you would see the terminator, that moving line where day gives way to night. It is not sharp, but feathered, glowing with the slow bleed of light through air. Every moment, somewhere, this line circles the earth, and the sky there performs its quiet transformation. Blue to gold, gold to rose, rose to violet, violet to gray. Each hue a letter in the endless letter of light. And then darkness. The scattering fades, the photons pass unhindered, and the sky reveals its true nature, not color, but depth. The stars appear not because they rise, but because the air finally stops hiding them. What we call night is the absence of illusion. Above us, the universe is not blue at all. It is invisible and infinite. But even here, perception plays its part. The night sky, too, is not what it seems. Those stars you see are not where they appear. Their light has traveled years, centuries, even millennia to reach you. You are seeing the past, a gallery of moments long gone, each still shining. The Milky Way arches across the heavens like a memory, and every photon within it carries a story of distance and delay. The sky, whether day or night, is always a story about time. Imagine for a moment that you could see beyond visible light. The blue of day would vanish, replaced by invisible colors, ultraviolet dancing just beyond perception, infrared whispering heat across the air. The world would glow differently. Every creature sees a different sky. Bees see patterns written in ultraviolet on petals. Birds perceive polarization, using it as compass and guide. Snakes detect the warmth of living bodies in total darkness. Even within the same world, the heavens change depending on who is looking. We live in one version of reality, painted by our biology. Our eyes, tuned to the middle of the spectrum, evolved under this particular sun. We see the colors that matter to survival, the green of plants, the amber of firelight, the blush of skin. The blue of the sky was perhaps never meant to be useful, only beautiful. It is an accident of physics that became a language of emotion. Think of how we use it. We say someone is blue when they are sad. We call the deep ocean blue to mean unknowable. We sing of blue moons, bluebirds, blue velvet. A color born of scattering became a metaphor for longing. Perhaps it feels melancholy because it reminds us, deep in the mind, that what we love is only an illusion of light. And yet, what a gentle illusion it is. We live beneath it, day after day, and rarely tire of looking up. We paint our walls the color of air. We name our planet after the hue of its horizon, the blue marble, hanging in darkness. Even knowing the science, even understanding Rayleigh's law and molecular diffusion, we still feel peace in that color. Because the truth of beauty has never depended on ignorance. Knowledge and wonder are not enemies. They are partners in the long conversation of seeing. To know why the sky is blue does not make it less so. It makes it deeper, more intimate. It means that when you look upward, you can trace every step, from sunlight split by nitrogen, to cones of your retina tuned by evolution, to the brain's alchemy of perception that turns vibration into serenity. You are not merely watching the sky. You are participating in its creation. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer once wrote that the world is my representation. What he meant was that we never see the world as it is, only as our minds arrange it. Color, sound, taste, time, all are translations, filtered through the narrow instruments of our senses. The blue of the sky is a message we write to ourselves. The universe sends us light. We return to it color. When you realize that, something shifts. You begin to sense how fragile the whole perception is, how much of reality is interpretation. Even the air you breathe, invisible and constant, is part of the illusion. It bends the light, slows it, scatters it, and gives it meaning. The atmosphere is the sky's only body. Remove it, and the world would look like the moon, black above, white below, silent forever. We owe our blue not to distance, but to breath. Perhaps that is why it feels alive, because it is. Every molecule that scatters sunlight has passed through something living. Oxygen from trees, nitrogen recycled from ancient seas, carbon exhaled by creatures long gone. The sky is a blend of every life that has ever breathed. When you look upward, you are looking into the shared memory of the planet. The poet Rilke once said, "The sky was never still again." He meant that even in calm, there is motion, the drifting of air, the trembling of light, the endless shifting of clouds. To see the sky as still is, to mistake pause for peace. Everything above us is in motion. Winds circling the globe, jet streams slicing invisible highways through the troposphere, auroras rippling near the poles. Even color moves. The blueness of the sky deepens and fades minute by minute, a slow pulse of the world's breathing. If you sit quietly long enough, you can almost hear it. Not with ears, but with the heart. That faint rhythm of change, like a tide too vast to measure. Every sunrise is an inhalation. Every sunset, an exhalation. Day and night are the lungs of the earth. And we, small and blinking, live in the pause between them. The illusion of blue teaches something larger than optics. It teaches impermanence. It shows that everything we perceive is momentary, dependent on angle, atmosphere, and the brief cooperation of light. The sky you see now is not the one that existed a moment ago, nor the one that will exist a moment hence. Even in looking, you change it. Your gaze is participation. Your presence bends the light slightly differently. The sky is always becoming, never being. That may be the quiet wisdom of nature, that all beauty is transient, all certainty conditional. Nothing is as fixed as it seems. The clouds that look eternal dissolve within minutes. The color that feels constant changes with the tilt of the sun. We live in a world of passing brightness, and yet we find peace in it, perhaps because we, too, are fleeting. The sky's impermanence mirrors our own, and somehow that recognition feels like home. It is strange. We look for permanence in the very place that proves it does not exist. We search for meaning in a color that only exists because of scattering, an optical byproduct, a side effect of air. But maybe that's the point. Maybe beauty lies precisely in that fragility, in the way the universe creates wonder out of physics, emotion out of light. The blue is temporary, but the longing it inspires is eternal. Consider how many have looked up before you. Every ancestor, every forgotten traveler, every child who has ever paused in play, all have shared this same gesture, the upward glance. It is one of the oldest acts of humanity, older than writing, older than language. To look at the sky is to feel both small and infinite at once. It is to sense, even wordlessly, that you are part of something vast. The same photons that brushed their faces now touch yours. The same scattering paints your world as it painted theirs. We are linked across centuries by color. If you could gather all those moments, every gaze, every wonder, every sigh beneath the heavens, the sky itself would glow brighter with memory. Perhaps that's what the blue truly is, the echo of attention, the accumulated tenderness of countless eyes. The scientists will say otherwise, of course. They will speak of refraction, cross-sections, molecular density, and scattering for larger particles. And they are not wrong, but neither are the poets. The sky is both equation and emotion, both wavelength and wonder. It is not a question of choosing between truth and beauty. They are the same thing viewed from different altitudes. When night returns and the blue fades into black, the stars do not argue with the day. They simply wait their turn. And in the faint glow of the Milky Way, you can almost hear the continuation of the same thought, that everything is connected through light. Light leaves the sun, touches the air, meets your eye, and becomes meaning. In that chain, there is no separation between physics and feeling. The cosmos speaks through photons. The heart translates them into awe. So when you wake tomorrow and see the morning sky beginning again, pale, silent, endless, remember this: you are not looking at color. You are looking at relationship. Between sunlight and air, between air and sight, between sight and soul. The sky is not blue. It is the dialogue between existence and perception. It is the breath of the planet made visible. It is the brief intersection of energy and awareness, where the universe looks at itself and finds beauty. And as you breathe beneath it, as the day opens quietly around you, you are part of that illusion, necessary, ephemeral, and utterly real. Because sometimes, illusion is the truest form of truth we have. There is one more thing the sky teaches us, though it never speaks it aloud. It teaches us how to see what cannot be held. Every color we know is only the ghost of light meeting matter, a vibration translated into sensation, an echo of something intangible. We forget this most days. We look at blue and call it a thing, as though we could pour it into a jar. But color is not substance. It is the collaboration between the world and our minds. Your eyes are not cameras. They are storytellers. They do not capture. They interpret. The light enters, the neurons fire, and the brain, sculpted by evolution and memory, decides what it means. Even the shade of the sky you see right now is not universal. Two people standing side by side will experience slightly different blues, their retinas tuned by genetics, their brains shaped by experience. In that difference lies a quiet truth. Reality is shared, but never identical. Every sky is personal. The one above you today is mixed with everything you've ever felt beneath it. Joy, grief, waiting, silence. Memory seeps into color, tinting perception. That's why a sunset can feel sad, even when it's beautiful, or why the pale blue of morning can feel tender and new. We don't see the sky as it is. We see it as we are. Think of how the light changes in your life. There are the skies of childhood, bright and endless, where clouds looked like continents and time stood still. There are the skies of growing up, restless, full of questions, the color of possibility. And there are the skies of later years, quieter, more reflective, where the blue carries weight and memory hums softly beneath it. The same light, but a different heart looking. The sky grows older with us, though it never changes. Perhaps this is why humans have always sought the horizon, because it is the meeting place between earth and air, between the known and the infinite. Every traveler, every dreamer, every wanderer has chased that line, only to find it forever retreating. You can never reach the sky. It is always a little farther, always just beyond. But that distance is what gives life its movement. Without horizon, there would be no direction. In a way, the blue is a compass of meaning. It pulls us outward, upward, forward, not toward a place, but toward a feeling. We walk, build, explore, not because we think the sky will end, but because it invites us to keep going. That's what beauty does. It stirs motion. Even in stillness, the color itself moves through time. At dawn, it is shy and silvery, touched by lavender. By midday, it burns clear and sure, sharp as clarity. By evening, it softens again into the language of farewell. The cycle repeats endlessly, but never identically. Each day paints the same sky in different words. You could live 100 years and never see the same blue twice. Clouds shift, particles drift, the sun's path changes with the seasons. Even your own eyes age. The lenses yellow slightly, filtering the light differently. So the blue you saw as a child no longer exists, not in the world, nor in you. And yet, that impermanence is what makes it precious. If the sky were unchanging, we might stop noticing it. It is the fading that keeps it alive. Every sunset reminds us of the cost of beauty, that everything lovely must pass. But in that passing, something else is given, the awareness of now. You cannot hold the sky, you can only witness it. And witnessing is the purest form of love. The Buddhists have a word for this, shunyata, emptiness, not meaning nothingness, but potential. The sky embodies it perfectly, vast, clear, receptive, yet always full. It holds clouds, storms, sunlight, and night equally, without attachment. It changes without resisting change. Perhaps that is why looking at it soothes us. We are reminded unconsciously of how to exist, open, fleeting, unafraid. At its heart, the sky is not blue because of physics alone. It is blue because we need it to be. We need a color vast enough to hold our questions, soft enough to calm our hearts. We need a mirror above us that forgives our smallness, that turns light into solace. And so, through accident and awareness, through scattering and seeing, the universe gave us blue. Maybe that's the true miracle, not that the sky has color, but that we can perceive it as beauty. That out of chaos and chemistry, consciousness arose that could look upward and feel awe. The atoms do not know they are painting. The photons do not know they are poetry. But we do, and that knowing is enough to make the illusion real. So the next time you look up, whether it's a bright noon or a pale dawn, pause for a moment. Let the blue settle into you. Think of the chain that connects you to it. Sunlight from a star, filtered through the breath of the world, entering your eye and becoming emotion. You are both observer and participant, both dreamer and dream. The sky is not above you. It is within you, scattered through your mind like light through air. The world we live in is made not only of matter, but of attention. Where we look, things come alive. And perhaps the sky's greatest gift is that it always invites us to look, to wonder, to rest, to remember that even the simplest illusion can hold infinite depth. So breathe. Let the air fill you, the same air that bends the sunlight into color, the same air that has moved through every living thing. Feel how it connects you to everything, from mountain to ocean, leaf to cloud. The sky is not something you stand beneath. It is something you are inside. You are part of its color, part of its quiet scattering. And when you close your eyes, it continues, the vastness, the calm, the endless blue that isn't really there, but somehow always is. Because in the end, illusion and truth are not opposites. They are simply two ways of describing the same wonder, that existence can be both knowable and mysterious, both measured and felt. The sky reminds us that understanding does not end wonder. It perfects it. To know it is to love it more deeply, for what it truly is, light, air, perception, and meaning, braided into one infinite breath. And that is why, even now, when science has mapped the heavens and we understand every scattering formula, we still stop at windows, at beaches, on mountain roads, and lift our eyes. We still whisper how beautiful it is. Because knowing has never taken the magic away, it has only made it shine more clearly. The sky is not blue. But in believing it is, we have learned everything about ourselves. That we long for beauty, that we create meaning, and that even in illusion, we can find truth. And yet, even with all our knowing, there remains something about the sky that cannot be explained. something that does not fit into equations or charts or wavelengths. It is the feeling, that gentle pulse inside us when we look up and everything else seems to fall away. It's not awe exactly, not even peace. It's something quieter, like recognition, as if the sky is reminding us of something we once knew, but have since forgotten, that we belong to the light and to the air and to everything in between. For the truth is, we are not separate from it. The boundary between the body and the atmosphere is a convenient illusion. With every breath, we exchange atoms with the sky, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, a constant communion between the self and the world. The air you breathe right now might once have passed through the lungs of a bird crossing an ocean or through the leaves of a tree 1,000 years ago. It may have risen from volcanic vents or drifted through ancient forests now turned to stone. The sky is a library of breaths, and we are each a fleeting sentence within it. Perhaps that's why silence feels different outdoors. It's not really silence at all. It's the whisper of air around us, the sound of our own breathing blending with the invisible hum of the atmosphere. When we are still, we can feel it, the world moving through us softly, patiently. The same air that carries weather also carries music, voices, laughter, prayers. It holds memory. It remembers everything that has ever been spoken beneath it. Sometimes, when you stand in an open field at dusk, you can almost sense that memory. The air feels thick with stories, fragments of conversations, the wing beats of birds, the forgotten sighs of distant lives. It's easy, in such moments, to feel that the sky is listening. Not watching, not judging, just listening. A vast and patient witness to the rise and fall of everything that moves below it. And maybe that's what draws us to it. Not the color, not the science, but the attention. The way it seems to hold space for us, endlessly, without reply. It asks nothing. It promises nothing. It simply is. In a world that moves too fast, the sky remains the great stillness, vast enough to absorb all our noise, gentle enough to never echo it back. When you lie down and stare upward long enough, something curious happens. The sky stops feeling like up. It becomes everywhere. You realize that direction is an illusion too, that space is all around and you are floating in it, held by gravity, wrapped in air. The sky is not above you. It is the ocean you live inside. You are already swimming, already adrift, already part of the infinite. The stars, when they return, do not break that illusion. They deepen it. Each one burns billions of miles away, yet their light rests softly on your eyes as if it belonged to you. You begin to understand that the distance between stars and self is not measured in miles, but in meaning. You are looking at them, but they are also looking at you, not consciously, perhaps, but inevitably, through the simple reciprocity of existence. Light travels both ways, outward and inward. The universe illuminates itself through our awareness. And so the question returns, if the sky is not blue, what is it? It is a field of relationships. It is the visible edge of invisibility, the meeting place of photons and perception. It is the mind's mirror, reflecting not what is there, but what it is capable of seeing. It is everything we cannot hold made gentle enough to bear. The sky is not blue. It is the color of attention, because that is what we are really seeing, not the sky itself, but the act of seeing made visible. The blue is a trace of consciousness, a byproduct of awareness interacting with light. It is the world reminding us that perception is not passive. It is creative. Every time we look, we make the sky again. Every time we notice, we bring it into being. The illusion persists because we continue to believe in it, and belief is its own kind of creation. When people say the sky is blue, they are not lying. They are describing the truth as it appears, and that, too, is a kind of truth. Reality is not one thing. It is a spectrum, like light itself, scattered through minds and languages, refracted by memory and desire. What we call illusion may simply be another wavelength of reality, one our instruments cannot yet detect, but our hearts can feel. The philosopher Alan Watts once wrote, "We do not come into this world. We come out of it. Like waves rising from the ocean, we are expressions of the universe, not observers of it." The sky is not something external. It is the visible aspect of our shared being. When you gaze upward, you are seeing the inside of existence turned outward, light reflected through life itself. And maybe, just maybe, that's why it's blue. Because blue is the color of openness, of possibility, of longing. It is the color furthest from touch, the one that stretches the farthest into distance. Blue invites you to reach, to wonder, to keep moving toward what cannot be reached. It is the color of the horizon, the eternal in-between. The next time you step outside on a quiet morning, look closely. Watch how the light pools at the edge of rooftops, how the air trembles above the ground, how the world wakes slowly, without sound. Notice how the sky is not one shade, but countless. Ultramarine near the zenith, soft cyan near the horizon, pearl where it touches the clouds. All of it born from scattering. All of it a delicate accident. And yet it feels deliberate, doesn't it? As if the universe knew exactly what it was doing when it made blue possible. We spend our lives chasing meaning, building systems, mapping stars, naming colors, but perhaps the greatest meaning is already here, unspoken, floating above us every day. Perhaps the sky exists to remind us that beauty does not need purpose. That wonder can exist without reason. That sometimes to understand is simply to be still. Because when all the explanations are said, when all the equations are solved, the sky remains vast, silent, unknowable. Not because it resists knowledge, but because it transcends it. Its truth is not the sum of facts, but the space they create. Its silence is not emptiness, but fullness beyond words. And in that fullness, there is peace. The kind that does not shout, does not teach, does not demand. The kind that simply holds. The same peace that has hovered above every life, every civilization, every story ever told. Look at it one last time tonight, before sleep. Step outside if you can. Let the air touch your face. Let the darkness breathe around you. Somewhere beyond the clouds, the stars are burning. The light is traveling, the earth is turning. You are part of it all. Part of the scattering, part of the breath, part of the illusion. Close your eyes. The sky is still there. Not blue, not black, just infinite. And now rest. For tomorrow, the light will begin again, and the sky will paint itself once more. Not with pigment, not with permanence, but with the same fleeting grace that fills every living moment. The sky is not blue, but it is enough. If you've drifted into calm or sleep, that's all right. The sky will still be waiting when you wake. Thank you for listening, for wondering, for sharing this small piece of the infinite. If you found peace in this journey, consider subscribing, not for algorithms or numbers, but simply to keep wandering together through the quiet corners of the cosmos. Until next time, look up and remember, the sky was never blue, but it has always been beautiful.